Hey, good morning, everybody. Welcome to Living Live on Air. Bring to you every Friday. No fail. How are we all doing? I see one already. For I'm actually doing this from Nashville, Tennessee. Would you believe? Where we've just had the Canadian record USA, which has like this time round. Actually, a really good experience. Turning really delicate. Do just obviously stuff. So big shout out to Happy Dance. If you need a they are check out. I talked to do. I did emceeing to do. It was more just like enjoying the night. Rob, can you tap to unmute sounds? How's it sounding, guys? Are we sounding bad? Is audio still bad, folks? I hope it's okay. When you I wonder what that means. You know, I hope that the audio is going to be okay with this. We have had some real difficulty across the state. And wow, no, is it sounds? I got a theory on this. Give me a guy. How audio is any better? Are we still sounding robotic? Good to know chat how it sounds. It's annoying. I can't actually hear myself other than your back. Let me with the audio proof. I'm hoping that it sounds okay. But yeah, it's annoying if it's not possible here. So this oh, Whiplash. No worries. I think he's coming in. I wonder whether the has in there. Okay, so I'm going to continue. Know in the comments if the audio is still bad. But personally, you can tell why looking badly. What is going on? Ezra saying I'm looking Ezra. Still oh my God. Well, I'm going to try and refresh this audio. I'm going to see what this. Hey folks, how's it going? I've just refreshed the browser and see whether we can get any improvements. The audio, but it seems that we are having some issues here. Can you hear me okay? My voice is rather bad, by the way. I have to make a comment on this. Still the same. Okay, I don't know what the story is here. Okay, no worries. It may well be we have to abandon this, guys. Is it better? I don't know. It is better. Okay, Simon's in. Picture's clear now. Okay, Simon, I'm gonna invite you on. Invite to the main stage. Clearing up 20% better. Right. Can hear me loud and clear, Lisa. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Hopefully everyone's this is getting improving. I don't know what's going on. I'm in a first world country. I should be able to do this. So we'll see how we go. Simon, I've invited you on screen. So you should see something pop up on your screen to say okay, sort of come on screen. So just accept that, and we'll see whether we're able to get in. Hope you're feeling better. I feel okay, to be honest. I do sound a bit hot, sort of rough, but that's coming from Nashville. It's a very noisy city. So yeah, you tend to have to shout to communicate if you're out and about in Nashville. Okay, no worries, folks. We have Simon coming on. I think this is working. Simon, how are you doing?
I am good, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good indeed. You got a really small sort of image there. I wonder why that is. But I've just boosted the size of it. Are you sort of coming in via the camera or coming in via your mobile, man?
This
Um,
is web camera. I was panicking. I might have to do that, but this is web camera. Yeah, this is full on.
no worries. We just have to maybe continue as best we can. I think you're on screen. We can see you. So yeah, I think we can get on with it. And thank you, by the way, Simon, for coming up on screen so early. I know it's like super early for you in the morning.
Yeah,
I
no
do really
problem. It's a
do.
normal. It's a normal time for me, so not a big problem.
No, why don't you do some intros, Simon? Can you introduce yourself? Like, who are you and what it is you do?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, My name is Simon Mullins. I sit here on the west coast of the U.S., just south of Seattle. Been in this country for a long time, yeah, a couple of 3 decades, but actually originally from the UK. I currently run a couple of communities actually called ESIX and Helix. They're both corporate only focused, and ESIX particularly focused on corporate executive recruiting. And it's been around now for 29 years, Hung, before
That's
you were
crazy.
born, which is amazing. I know, right? I mean, you wouldn't even know. But and then Telix is another one which is focused on the TA leadership and TA global TA teams. But I've been doing this for 10 years. Before that was 10 years at Microsoft, which is why I'm up here. And I was running for most of that time. I was running their corporate executive recruiting function for them up there up here, I should say, in Seattle. Before that, 7 years Corn Ferry, both coasts of the U.S. Before that, a couple of years in Hong Kong. And then, of course, before that in the UK. So I've been recruiting for almost ever. A little bit of other stuff in before there, but mostly recruiting forever. And largely a executive recruiting for the last eon or two. But there you go, yeah. And just for the sake of it, ESIX, by the way, we have 100 or so members, large corporations, membership, subscription. Again, as I say, been around for almost 30 years. We've written a couple of books, which, by the way, we're giving away, just for the record, or the Kindles anyway. So I can get those in the chat in a minute if you want.
Yeah, definitely. And really interesting sort of segment. Thank you, Simon. I've just shared Simon's link into the chat stream, by the way. So go ahead and connect with him. Quite an interesting sort of community that you basically are managing. Corporate Exec Search. Probably most of the audience here are more aware of search being, third-party search. We all have heard of the famous brands, the Conferries of this world, and the Egon Zenders and so on. But of course, there's an in-house sort of corporate version of that, and it's a very healthy group of people whose job is to recruit at leadership level for typically large corporate businesses. And those are the people that you curate, and you've got a wonderful community. ESIX is a paid members community, I believe, Simon, isn't it?
You're quite right.
But if you are like a in corporate exec search in a leadership tier, you might want to be take an interest in becoming a member of this, because of course you get access to that collective intelligence that we're going to be discussing a little bit today. So really interesting sort of a segment here. Before we kick off and discuss the report, Simon, I wonder whether we can just lay some groundwork to the discussion, mainly on sort of how corporate exec search is distinct from, the rest of the corporate recruiting world. Like, what is the distinctions between the practices and behaviors that might distinguish someone who's working at leadership recruiting compared to the other types of recruiting we might find in corporate?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, the simplest and most tactical is that there's far fewer recs, right? In fact, I'll talk about this later on, but there's something like average 8 at any one time, 7.6, I think. And, in corporate TA, corporate volume TA, I mean, I know, goodness knows how many dozens they have at any one time. So that's one thing. Of course, one's dealing with the highest level of the company and possibly the board as well. So that's a whole different level, which doesn't necessarily always happen. And everything takes longer. Again, we're talking around 100 days, which is, I mean, again, in the corporate volume TA world, that would cause some challenges. But anyway, yes, so it's a lot more time, a lot fewer higher touch, a lot fewer recs, white glove kind of a situation. And sometimes we can, I mean, again, we can talk about this, but sometimes these roles, that we can be hunting somebody and after somebody for 3, 4, 5 years before we actually hire them. So it's a whole different ball game. Although quite honestly, Hung, and I kind of, you and Adam have talked about this in the past, it's kind of where recruiting might be going in general, maybe not quite as extreme as that. But honestly, it's kind of where it's going, right? A lot more consultative work, a lot more time that they can actually get involved. And this is where, we'll talk about a little bit about the future, but becoming much more of the holistic talent consultant. And that's, I think, where we're seeing that coming up already in corporate exec recruiting.
Yeah, really good. I didn't realize, I mean, some immediate sort of stats, which are really interesting. So far less recruitment requirements. You're not working on 20 vacancies. You're working on a very small number of vacancies.
Right.
Your stakeholders are going to be different. The stakeholders are obviously at the very senior level of any business, then maybe even at board level. So how do they sort of behave and how do they think about hiring? Probably very differently. I wonder whether there'll be commentary and requirements made in discussion at C-level recruitment that simply would not be permissible in a kind of different segments of the lower levels of the recruiting funnel. For instance, you might talk about you're looking, let's say you're recruiting for a CEO. What kind of CEO you're looking for? Are you still talking about years of experience? Are you still talking about domain expertise? Are you talking about skills and attributes? Attributes? Are you talking about named candidates? Like it could well be we're at the level where you're not having a generic perception of the role, but there's a clear list of people that might be suitable, and that's the target. And that, of course, makes it very different because discovery is no longer the issue. The issue is actually cultivation of the relationship, and how do you actually start engaging with someone with whom you might look to make a recruitment decision 2, 3, 4 years down the track.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, one can't choose the best of the 1,000. I mean, you're choosing the best of the 5 or 10 that can do this in the world, right? That's the key. And as you said, developing that relationship over time to persuade them to come across. Yeah.
This has obviously got to affect sort of the acquisition side of it as well. Like, I mean, are jobs at this level advertised in some place? I'm presuming you don't bang a job out for a CEO and Indeed, for instance. No disrespect for Indeed, but I've never seen one. I do recall seeing advertisements for CEOs back in the print media days.
Right. In the Times on Sunday. Yeah.
That's it. Exec appointments. It was actually their niche, wasn't it? But again, print advertising has disappeared to a large degree. So, how do you actually fill a pipeline?
Oh, you've frozen on me, but I'll talk back on that one. Yeah, it is. Yeah, one is. Oh, actually, it's very interesting. It used to be up until the last, I don't know, 5 to 7 years, maybe, that hopefully people can hear me, by the way, that it would be super secret squirrel. Nobody would hear anything. It'd be very, very covert. I've lost Hung, so I'm going to, hopefully people can still hear me. I'll keep talking. But now, interestingly, because there's so many regulations, a lot of government, okay, perfect, thank you, Lisa. A lot of government, especially those companies or organizations that are regulated, deal with the government, or they have some sort of other overarching legal aspects. Many folks now post more than actually, more than I would have thought, quite honestly, especially with my history. We would never have posted roles. Now, I believe the majority of folks post roles because they have to. They may only do it 2 or 3 days. And this is largely, I think, as I say, very big companies, and the kind of companies who are in our membership are very big companies. But they have to post because they're told to, and they have to, so they might have to post 2 or 3 days. Now, maybe not the CEO, but certainly some of these top vice presidents, million-dollar companies, whatever it is. Well, I could carry on and do the presentation. I really am not going to be able to stand in for someone like Hung, but I can carry on and share some slides. I don't know. Do you want to do that? Because I'm sure he's going to come back in a second. Yeah, all right, Jim, let's do that. I'm going to do my best to see if I can get some slides coming in. Let me just get 1 second as I work through. I only do, presentations like this about every day, but we shall see if I can make this work. And I'm actually going to just show a screen and talk. Hopefully we will get this to work. On the second screen. Bear with me 1 second. All right, I'm going to share that and move all this over so that you don't have to see that. Can someone give me, apparently to avoid an infinity mirror, don't share entire screen. I don't know what the heck that means. But can anybody see that full screen and not other stuff? Thank you, Astrid. Appreciate it. I don't know. This is very strange. Okay, so I'm going to continue going with this, and we'll just have to see how it works. Good. You can see the slide. Perfect. Good. So I'm not going to go too long. Don't worry. Oh, there we go. There's Hung. You have to tell me, by the way, that you have to tell him that it was all okay, just for the record. You told me it was okay. So these are Hung. You're back. These are. Can you see screen? I was just going with it. They told me to go with it. Honestly. Can you hear us, Hung?
Oh, I mean, thank you for doing that. I do have very strange internet in this hotel. It's me. So yeah, do use. I'll
go with it, and I'll do my best. Yeah, Jim. It was Jim's fault, for the record. I'll do my best to keep an eye on the chat and comments as well, in case anybody have questions, because I know you were going to stop me at various times. Anyway, these are all our members, very lovely members. The point of this is really it's a credibility slide. Some of you might even be in those companies, and I'm not going to go into this, but this is what we provide. This is just the front of the deck, networking, benchmarking, and other things. So we have around 100, actually over 100 organizations who respond to this. Now that doesn't sound like much relative to a LinkedIn share, as it were, or a LinkedIn survey. But this is, it's a almost 40-page document. In fact, these are 87 slides, I think it is. Yeah. It's super deep. It's very much a benchmark as opposed to a high-volume 5-question survey. It takes a good hour and 20 minutes. And you can see there's a large companies who've responded. The point, again, being these are credibility slides. That's the point of this. But what I thought was kind of interesting here is that we have a larger proportion than previously of what you might call mid-sized companies. Again, these are still very big companies, but a larger proportion than usual of mid-sized companies. And I wonder, does that mean, and this is one of the things we might perhaps talk about, I wonder if that means that executive recruiting and sponsoring a function like this, which is not a cheap deal and a very long-term strategic value, is not necessarily only in the realm of the big high value in massive companies necessarily anymore. Anyway, all these various things, as I say, we have 87 slides. I'm not going through 87. We've got a sample of about 15 or something, and it's a 40-page document. I think, Hung, I don't know if you've shared with kind of the synopsis, the highlights yet, but anyway, a couple of things. We talk about where this function reports into, and you can see that here it's largely into the recruiting or TA staffing kind of space, but not necessarily all of it now. And this is, I think, a bit of a trend we'll talk perhaps about. Holding steady, about a quarter of the folks who respond are reporting into this talent, common sort of broad integrated talent model. That's where we're seeing things going in the future, I think. A little bit more of that. We do have a website, Michael. I'll find it for you. The non-member website is ixcommunities.com, ixcommunities.com. I'll get that out for you in a minute. This is something that we, thank you, Jim. And for those of any of you who are members of it, by the way, you should already know it's ixcommunities.org, but the external website is .com. But this is the we ask the leaders every year, and for the record, we've done this survey for 25 years. So we ask the leaders every year what their priorities are, and here you can see the last 20 years worth of responses. And basically the point here is a couple of things. One is that you can see the beginning and end. We have, it's rather strikingly, to me it looks like orange, but rather strikingly, in 2005, nobody was talking about diversity. In 2025, barely anybody's talking about diversity. And you can see in 2021, their highest priority, and has actually had been for most of the last 10 years, had been all about diversity. I don't want to shame or blame, but that is kind of shocking, and it's not surprising, but it is shocking. And I don't need to go on about it. You're all not surprised, I'm sure, but that is kind of where it is.
Really interesting. Just one of this. How did you get that information? Can you give us some idea of what the question was? Straight up rank of offers what was priority, rather than, so how was that question posed, I guess?
You're a little hard to hear, Hung, but I think what you were saying. So yeah, what we're saying basically is we ask folks what their top 5 priorities are in the coming 12 months every year, and have done consistently every year. And then they get these choices, and they have it. There's an other as well, so they can write in an other. But it's quite small on the bottom, but hopefully you can see that. They get the choices of tech, they get the choices of diversity, they get the choices of integration with internal talent, talent pipelining, or just improving the model in general, or going global, or starting up the function. We ask these consistently, and these have been asked consistently since at least 2014. You can see there at the bottom. And so we ask them what their coming year's priorities are. And actually that frankly helps us. That helps us with our agendas and our topics and our speakers as well. So it's self-serving. But this is what comes up. And you can see 2005, not on the charts when it comes to diversity. Big in 2021, of course, particularly, and then unfortunately dropped heavy this year. The green one, in my eyes, it looks like green, very big in 2005 when it comes to improving the model and the process. And then that's popping up again over here on the right-hand side as people are thinking about technology, do more with less. And, we hear this across all of our memberships, right? It's basically the same. You're all probably hearing the same thing. And then also, I think that one's about talent pipelining. It's hard to see the colors, unfortunately. But yeah, I believe that one's in talent pipelining. And that's also coming up as an important area, which is not surprising. It has been for some time, but it's actually the highest priority this year when it comes to competitive intelligence. So that's all the Toby Culshaw world, as we know. Anyway, so now I'm going to skip on to what the team does. And to Hung's point, what are these people doing? How is it different? We ask the level at which, or the compensation level at which our folks are hiring. And what was interesting here is, and it's still quite high, people are hiring, and these are US dollars, but people are hiring in the range, and these are corporate direct hire teams, in the range of $350,000 plus, as you can see. 2/3 of them, 3/4 of them last year, about 57% this year, which is frankly a little surprising. I don't quite know why that dropped. And then you can see at the bottom there, those who are hiring in the $500,000 US plus and the 650,000 plus are not insignificant either. So these are high-level hires that they're making. And the reason we ask this question candidly is that when they talk about this with the search firms are often saying, oh, these corporate exec recruiting teams are usually just hiring at 100,000 or 150,000. Well, you can see that's patently not true. We also ask, in the same vein, what kind of level, so another way of looking at it, in terms of the proportion of the companies that they're being hired into. So the exec population in this on top left is like less than 1%, and these are the populations that our recruiting teams are hiring into. And you can see that roughly 60%, 59%, slightly up, are hiring into that top 1.5% of the company. So the very highest tier of the organization, which is, again, kind of where Hung was going with this question. So far, I'm hoping this is all making sense. But this is just kind of setting the stage, as it were. This is probably the most exciting thing, which I think is why I've got a little bit of there we go. Hopefully you can see that. Whereby more folks are getting more involved with external talent. And again, I touched on this earlier. This, I think, is where we're going in a broader sense. More holistic talent, getting much more involved in corporate succession planning. Sorry, more holistic talent perspective, getting more involved in corporate succession planning. And this is slowly going up, which is great over the years. And then the second one down there, 30%, almost a third, are involved with hiring NED or board member hires, which is huge. Now, they're not all doing them. Around 50-60% of those who are doing these searches are using search firms, but that means 44, if my numbers are correct, 44% of those are not using search firms and doing those hires directly, which again, huge impact, really high value, and kind of exciting, I have to say, in my opinion. But then I'm kind of a bit of a nerd around these things. In terms of volume, so folks are doing a roughly about 106, well, not about exactly 106 hires a year, slightly down, but kind of roughly about the same as last year, and somewhat similar to the prior years, except for a big bump in 2023. And you can see, therefore, it's not a big number, I should say, and you'll see in a minute that they're only doing about 20 per recruiter per year, small teams as well. But what's interesting here is an increase. When we look at these on the charts at the bottom, people are doing more direct search, doing more hires through direct search or sourcing rather than other aspects like retained search firms at both the headquarters company, which is where it used to be that we'd only ever have corporate exec recruiting folks. They'd usually only be at the corporate headquarters. Now we see that people have corporate exec recruiting folks all across the world. We see that actually, we ask that question and we have folks in all sorts of places. And you can see also quite a big jump on the right-hand side there for non-corporate headquarter roles, how they're sourcing them directly as well. So this is just not going away as much as I think the exec search firms would like it. And we're not enemies with the search firms, for the record. People are still using search firms about 10 or 20% of the time, even if they have a sophisticated, sizable internal in-house direct sourcing team. They're still using search firms because we need to be in partnership with them. And honestly, you don't want to use search firms for everything, quite frankly.
Simon, can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah.
With regards to the companies that are making a decision to go to search, are they also in parallel recruiting for the role directly? Or do you know whether they've simply said, okay, we're going to get this outsourced for whatever reason it may be? Do you have any visibility on that?
I don't know the specific answer, but I do know that, honestly, the general thought of that is that, because remembering we're talking about a small population that we're talking to, we don't want to muddy the waters with two people going in and talking to the same 30, 40, 50 target folks. So generally, we would never, I don't believe, I'm not going to say never, but I've not yet heard of anybody going and doing a direct sourcing and using a search firm. We would often, an internal team, in fact, most of the cases, we have that data, I don't have it on here, but in most cases, even if we're using a search firm, the internal direct team is still managing that search firm. So it's not a separate exercise. But no, usually it would be just a one exercise going out talking to those 20, 30 people outside in the market who might be the ones to talk to. Again, because that muddies the water, it's kind of confusing. We would, having said that, often, and by the way, the search firms often would say that contractually, they would say, we have to be exclusive. That's part of the deal. Remembering you're paying them up front in most cases, and you're paying them a lot of money. You'll see in a minute. But the other thing is that if we do know folks, and if we have done the search ourselves, or we've known folks from some years back or something on the in-house function, what we'll actually say, these 5 people, here you are, search firm, these 5 people are off limits. We already know them. We've already got our own process going with them. We've already known them for 3 years, and so on. So in that case, you can sort of segment those 5 people that we already know, and the search firm goes off and finds the other 25. I don't know, long-winded answer, but I hope that helps.
No, very clear, Simon. Thank you.
So this is something which, again, we ask on all aspects, right? Search management software technically really just means CRM. And, okay, it's like I akin this kind of stuff like ATSs to school lunches or hospital lunches. No disrespect to anybody in the school or hospital industry. But, it's like, we'll get around it. But what was a little bit surprising here, and I hope none of the CRM folks are listening, is that when we ask this, we ask, okay, are these products helpful or extremely helpful? Generally, the helpful / plus helpful or extremely helpful has been steadily going down. So people are no longer in love with their products in the way that they used to be. And I don't know, does this mean that we should have some new kids on the block? And of course, with AI, we might have some new kids coming on when it comes to technology. But it's a little kind of concerning, I have to say. Anyway, we ask about AI. I'm rushing through here, Hung. I hope it's okay with the product, with your screen and everything.
Okay, Simon, no problem. This is great.
Okay, good. So we ask about AI. We started asking last year, actually, partly because AI hasn't really been that much of a thing. In fact, candidly, technology, and again, I'm no disrespect, man, but we're not in the corporate exec recruiting space. We're not known as being technology leaders, as it were, or early adopters. Mostly the higher volume TA does big systems, and then we kind of come along later. But it's interesting because we've seen a lot more usage on the left-hand side. You see it looks like teal to me, which is 2024 numbers. Few folks were using a few things, usual stuff, last year's use cases, job descriptions, communications, candidate reports, and so on. A lot more folks now, as you can see, in those areas, but also getting involved in note-taking, interview feedback, scheduling. Usually, we've talked about this quite a bit, and we talk about AI all the time, candidly. But usually, when we talk things like scheduling interviews, it's not the highest-end leader interviews. It's the one-on-one with the recruiter, for instance, because that's where the systems work. When you're moving and shuffling senior executive candidates around, that doesn't work online, doesn't work with AI at the moment, as far as we know. And it's kind of general themes. Again, this is no surprise to most of you. Because most of our organizations and the folks who respond to this survey are large companies, then they're often using Copilot, and they might use other things in addition, but they're often using Copilot, Microsoft Copilot, mostly because Microsoft is already in their stack, as it were. So that's kind of what's happening. But we're seeing other stuff. Some people actually have custom-built tools, and they're actually quite advanced. A couple of our members talk about that. We talked about this last week in New York. They've been using it quite a while, and they're quite ahead of the game, which is great. There's the usual suspects when it comes to the specialized, but not so much of this used at corporate exec world. These products, of course, you would all know in the high volume space, but not so much in the corporate exec. But they're starting to come on board in that area. And then there are some niche things. I've seen some folks starting to use MetaView, which is a rarity. And I don't know what anybody thinks about these. And Seacat and Foundem have been around for a few years now. We've had some folks testing those out. We hear feedback. I'm not going to criticize anybody in any company because many of them are members, but we do hear mixed feedback on these things. And of course, people are mixed about how they're using them. But you're right, Bob. Yeah, not necessarily every product here is usable in all these scenarios, right? But also, people might be putting some of these things in, but they're not necessarily finding as adoption, and so on and so forth, which is a bit of a problem. When it comes to, and this is about me personally, I'm wondering whether senior leaders would share quite as much about I'm looking to retire, or I need to fire this person, that's why we need to hire this leader in 2 years, or something like that, or whatever. Whether they would really share quite so much with us if they knew that they were being recorded, because they share some quite intimate details about not intimate, but quite sensitive information about their infrastructure and their leadership team and so on and so forth. So I don't know, interesting stuff. Anyway.
On that note, Simon, just hold on that last slide again.
Please, go ahead.
I had have some conversations with some of these AI vendors, and they did mention that at the corporate exec level, there was this heightened concern about data leakage, exactly as you say, because C-level hiring is often highly confidential. In many cases, maybe a kind of incumbent in place. And so you literally, there is a risk if you start, recording or transcribing information via an AI, that's going to go off to a server somewhere. You don't know, where that is going to kind of leak out on. So that there is, I think, a potential scope for almost an air-gapped AI for this service. In other words, it's completely isolated from the wider service. It's maybe customized for a particular organization, and the information is not going to be leaked outside. of any function. So great to see some of the tools that we know and love sort of used by Corporate Exec Search. But I do think that there may be an emergence of a kind of a mini industry, if you like, of very highly specialized, more almost like custom service, customizer sort of options, versions of these to increase that information security.
Actually, I'll build on that a bit, Han, because even back to the good old days of CRMs, right, which most folks have, not everybody, but even when they have a CRM, I've forgotten the actual, but I'm going to guess it's like 3/4 of folks have a separate standalone instance of that CRM, even if TA is using the CRM as well, even if it's the same product. Often it's not the same product because the corporate exec, the needs for some of the CRM pieces are just different at the moment. Now, these, of course, will change, and I'm sure that they'll get together and so on. But at the current situation, most folks have a separate CRM instance for basically the same reason you were describing, and not necessarily about, oh, we've got to keep you out because we're all elitist, although there is a bit of that, and I unfortunately was bad at that in the day. But anyway, but actually quite honestly, and this is the reason, frankly, I suggest to folks that they do need a separate CRM, is that there is risk of insider trading. If you imagine that these companies, say you're a $40 billion company, chances are you're hiring somebody for your CFO who's also at a public company, listed company. And therefore, if that information that you are talking to the CFO of another publicly listed company, that is insider trading risk information, and nobody should know that. Because if more people can see that than should, then of course, all the folks who can see that could plausibly be at risk of being indicted for insider trading, right? So that's the lawyers freak out. Whenever the corporate lawyers hear that, they absolutely freak out and they completely agree that we need a separate CRM. So, I mean,
Very
really,
interesting.
it's a perfect example and an argument, honestly, and people literally use it all the time. I mean, I'm probably giving away a bit of a secret. Hopefully, there's no lawyers on the call. But so let's go into this. I touched on this earlier, the diversity thing. The only one line that is increased here, I think I've highlighted it, is at the very bottom. Now, granted that I think it's something like 70% of these folks are US headquartered. They've got folks sitting all over the world, so these are global companies, but they might well be US headquartered, which means they're heavily influenced by what's going on in the US, of course. But every tactic here, I think, as far as I can see, has dropped this year. Again, no point in shaming and blaming, because frankly, the folks on this call and our members can't necessarily do anything about that. It's a different level. It's a policy level. It's a whole different thing. Having said that, still, even though significantly down, like half, a quarter of folks still have some sort of formal program for hiring diversity at the exec level. So I'm going to take something I can, right? So it's a little bit of a positive there, but it's still it is what it is. Anyway, okay. Talk about search firms. Always a little bit concerned about this, just in case someone doesn't like it very much. So we ask what folks are using, how they're using search firms, how much they're spending, and so on and so forth. And as I mentioned earlier, 21% are still using search firms, even if they have a direct hiring team. It's about the same. It has been around that number for quite some time. This is a lot of data on here, so I apologize. I'll highlight some things in a minute, I promise. But what we also ask is that every year, how are we doing on time? Okay, every year we look at the folks who answered last year and this year, and see what the delta was between their answers last year and this year. So in other words, apples to apples, literally, because different people respond different times, of course. But we ask specifically those respondents who answered the question last year and this year. And those respondents increase their search firm spend by 5%. Usually, we've seen a reduction over the course of the years, 18% there, except for that absolute spike in 2022 when suddenly the market went crazy. Nobody had any team members. We were desperate to do things, and so we went out and bought a lot of search firm fee stuff.
Simon,
go ahead.
It's very interesting to know that the search firm spend has increased. Is that as a result of more commissions to search firms, or is it a kind of inflation of the fee? Do you have any read on that?
I do. Hold that thought. All right, so I'll skip through and you can read the rest. But yeah, so people that are spending a fraction up on an average, but the overall search firm fee has come down. So they're using more searches, but the average fee has come down to 194. These are all US numbers, or US digits, I should say. US currency, I should say. But that's come down on overall average. And in the US, we spent a fraction more, actually more than a fraction, whatever that is, roughly 20% more, up to 1.7 million. And in the UK and Europe headquarters, average spend was 1.3. But skip through so you get some of these things. So increase in 5%. But you can see that the drop down in Europe spend was the lowest in 7 years. And down over there we go. Okay, there it is. And the search fee came up from 153. So in Europe, it went up a bit on average, but on average across all of the companies who responded, it went down. And in the US, I think it went down as well. So that's why the average came down. But yeah, does that answer your question?
It does indeed. Very,
go on.
Very interesting, Simon. And I do believe that the search firms are one of the sectors within the recruitment sector that have actually done okay. Like obviously staffing generally, on generalist staffing firms, I think everyone's seen like profits and revenue drop. But I do believe that it's the search tier that has actually done okay even in these turbulent times. Is that does this information confirm that assessment, Simon?
I would say, well, if you look at the market as well, I mean, this is a 20. There are estimates, no one really knows, but it's a $20 to $25 billion market just for corporate exec firms, not all of TA, not the technology, just corporate exec firms are roughly valued at 25 billion. I think it's 22, 23 or something, and which is huge. They had the highest revenue of their history, I think, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago now, maybe out of date, but probably about the time we spent a fortune. I believe they've struggled a little bit. They're not as high as their crazy numbers were, but they're still staying strong. And they're still, I don't know where they're getting the revenue from, frankly, but they're still staying solid. We've seen some changes. There are quite a few acquisitions going on from what I'm told and hear and read, frankly, but we're not as in touch with them as we used to be. But we are hearing a lot of acquisitions happening. And then I don't know if some of you might know that Heidrick & Struggles is one of the Shrek firms, the top 5 firms when it comes to revenue. And they have just gone private. So not sure what that tells us, but that means the private equity world is interested in investing in that. So there's got to be some level, I'm guessing, of expansion and growth coming forward, I'm assuming. Now, they're mostly into the space now of not just executive recruiting, but they're also doing talent assessments, and so on and so forth. Yeah, we do actually, Michael. So Michael's asked a question there about sense of a percentage of candidate salary. Yeah, it used to be traditionally it's 33%. I think most folks, we do have this. I don't have this on slides. I can find it for you separately if you don't mind emailing me because I don't have it. But I think it's dropped down so that more folks are doing 30% now. We had seen a trend toward, and it kind of goes up and down depending how strong we are in terms of negotiation, quite honestly. As you know, when they're strong, we have a weaker level of negotiation ability, and therefore the search firm fees on average go up to 33%. I think for a while we were seeing it 25%. What's more interesting though, Michael, I'm going to be a politician and answer a slightly different question, is where they're not necessarily doing the usual time-based 0, 30, 60 days as it used to be traditionally. You pay them at 0, you pay them at 30 days, you pay them at 60, whether you're doing a search well or not. Now, more folks are using, I forgot what the word we use, but basically when there's progress, so they might pay them when the search list has come, the short list has come in, you might pay the first 30% of that 100% fee. When I say 100% fee, sorry, so 10%, for instance. And then when the first candidates start coming in, you might pay them the second tranche, as in 10%. And then perhaps closer to placement, you might pay. So there's more of this milestone-based, that's the word, milestone-based things coming into their play now, which is great to see. But unfortunately, still the traditional model, 33% time-based, is still prevalent. Not as much, not gone away as much as I would have liked, as have admin fees. Saying that, Europe is much better Europe and UK are much better at negotiating admin fees away. These are fees which I can talk about some other time, but they're fees which are just for the sake of doing business. There used to be FedEx and video conferencing fees. Now I'm not quite sure what they're for, but those are kind of a standing fee on top of the search firm fee. Europe is usually much better at dropping those things and getting those out of the contract, but they're still around as much as I don't like that very much. But anyway,
I didn't realize that that was a standard part of the fee structure, Simon. So what you're saying is that not only is it our search firms being paid obviously on the delivery of the work, but actually the management of it, the meetings required, that's invoiced, the numbers of I guess calibration calls that go through. So it's almost like a loyally style
exactly
way of
right.
charging. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to cut across you, but yeah, back in the day, this model, the search firm model, was actually built on the old consulting firm, the BCG, Boston Consulting Groups, and the McKinseys and so on. In fact, that's where the original search firms came from, and the accounting firms. So it's the very same model. Hence, you see the hierarchy of the partner. It's not now anymore necessarily, but originally the partner, the senior associate, and so on. Same sort of a model. They borrowed the whole thing from accounting back 50, 70 years ago. Actually, we're talking 100 years ago when search firms started off. And it was Boston Consulting model. So same thing. They would charge for all their admin. They would charge for expenses. Well, expenses is okay, but ever have a whole separate fee. That still stands in many cases, and it's not small. I mean, if you look at a fee of say 30% of the candidate salary, which is what that 194,000 is, you're paying another say $7,000, $8,000, $9,000 on top of that. So you're technically paying 35%. I mean, well, whatever the numbers are, not very good. Anyway, so it's a bit crazy. Couple more things. I want to get to the kind of a couple of bits because I know I'm chattering a bit too much. I'm sorry.
Not at all, Simon. This is great.
So this is just a bit of a thing. As you can see, unfortunately, time to fill is slowing down. This is specifically search firms, and I'm not criticizing them because everyone's had to struggle, quite honestly. But time to fill has got a bit worse. Now, of course, we're going to see that probably get worse as we now have to pull people in so we can actually prove that they're the right person, verify because of all this plausibly fraudulent activity, and so on and so forth. So we're going to see this slow down a bit. And also, return to office has made this a bit more of a challenge as more companies are less willing to give remote work to senior leaders or let them hire them remotely. Then, of course, that also slows things down and makes it harder to persuade people and so on and so forth. So this is specifically, the next section is specifically about direct hiring or direct teams. And this is what we measure them on. Again, bit of an eye chart here, but the premise being you can see that hiring manager satisfaction has come up. In my eyes, it looks like orange is the 2025 numbers. So it's the right-hand column of all the columns. And hiring manager sat has jumped up. Candidate sat has jumped up. Quality of hire, which is good. It's the holy grail, so I'm not quite sure how we're measuring it. But anyway, probably the usual, tenure, performance, and promotion of velocity and so on, plausibly, but we'll see. And unfortunately, at the same time, conversely, as again, not to overbeat the horse, as it were, but diversity has dropped down the most in this area. When we look at these, and again, we've got loads of metrics around direct hiring and direct hiring teams and what work they do and so on and so forth. But this is kind of an interesting one. It's a bit unfair because people will often use search firms for their toughest searches or searches that we've already had trouble solving, and therefore we'll give it out to a search firm. So it's a bit unfair, but hey, makes me feel good. Time to fill slower with search firms. Time to presenting the finalists, which is a very important metric because so much after that is involving the hiring manager taking forever or the hiring manager and hiring team taking forever to schedule or something. So time to presentation of finalists, I think, is a more important metric for our teams. Are also both positive, which is great. So we're faster. We're putting in fewer candidates per hire. We're doing better when it comes to diversity hires, non-female. Unfortunately, we're basically the same when it comes to female diversity. And completion rate is not so good either because that's how many searches have you completed in a year. This is a bit around what you were asking. People are doing 20 searches a year on average, about the same as the last couple of 3 years, so no particular difference there. Number of concurrent searches at any one time is, I think it's 7.6 on the chart on the left. So small number, still a high number. Many folks would say we should only have 4 or 5 at any one time. Some of these might be slowing down and so on and so forth. That might be why we've got 7, 8. Number of hires, which is different to number of projects because we do a lot of things around succession, pipeline, and so on. 45% here, recruiters have some sort of speciality, i.e. they might specialize in the corporate functions or they might specialize in technology and so on and so forth. There we go. I talked earlier, actually 78% are also running the searches, even though the search firm is being used. So basically, we're source agnostic. We're managing the bringing in of the talent and making sure the right talent gets brought in and assessed properly, whether it comes from a search firm or whether it comes from us direct. And 62% getting involved with external, but therefore 38% doing external work as well. This is something that you didn't ask, Hung, but I thought you were going to. How much or why do we use a search firm if we have a direct team? Confidentiality, you touched on this. If there's an incumbent in the role, and it'd be obvious if somebody from hunglee.com were calling with hunglee.com telephone number or email address, and they're asking for a CEO, it kind of gives it away. So those are the kind of reasons that people are using search firms, but also specialization. As I said earlier, you don't want to use you don't want to do a general counsel search if you're only doing a general counsel once every 10 years. Why build that muscle in your own team? It'd be more valuable to do merchandising in the retail space or product management in technology or something, and have a search firm do general counsel, just give it away. Those kind of things is what comes up, and so on and so forth. Whew. Dumped a lot on you there, sorry. Kept it going though.
Brilliant stuff, Simon. It really is. Thank you so much for that brilliant presentation. I'm sure that many people will be very interested in seeing a copy of the deck. Let me see if I can get. I do believe I've gone off. My video's not happening, Simon. So I wonder whether you can hear me okay.
We can hear you fine. I mean, now everyone's just looking at me, which is a bit.
Oh, stage is empty. I think Simon's actually left. So I think, okay, I think everyone can hear me but not see me, which is rather disturbing. But Simon's just left, I think accidentally. I do believe I'm going to try and bring him back. And we do want to see Simon and say thank you for him properly. But what a wonderful presentation that was. And I do think that it's Simon's back. So Simon, yeah, I was just saying, wonderful to see you. You might have to just hold the fort in terms of being on the video whilst the disembodied Hung is chatting over the air. But I just want to thank you for your wonderful presentation. Really educational. And there's a couple of things I think the audience might be interested in. Firstly, they may be interested in the deck itself. I don't know whether that's proprietary information for ESIX members. If it is, of course, don't bother sharing that. But if there's anything that you could distribute to people, do share the link in the chat stream. They'll be very interested in it. And I guess if there's anybody that is prepared, if there's a full deck, you want to get they need to submit some data on, get an email address on, I'm sure they'd be happy to look at it as well. So really interesting stuff. This is really important, Simon. The reason why is because it's a mystery a little bit on the exec search side. It's great to demystify some of it, not all of it. I think it's right that it stays a little bit mysterious. That's always good. But I do think that increasingly a lot of the search techniques are going to kind of bleed down into, the other parts of the recruitment activity, principally because advertisements, I think, will continue to work for certain types of roles. But there's certain sort of in-demand type characters probably would not respond to adverts and will increasingly retreat away from public spaces, much in the same way as a CEO or a C-level person has already. It is very noticeable that there comes a point in your career where you kind of delete LinkedIn. It's very noticeable. There's a point where LinkedIn no longer becomes a useful thing for you because you're a known face in industry. People know how to get you. You probably can get on to connect with anybody you want,
Right.
and you don't need the noise. And I do think that a lot more people will start kind of removing themselves from LinkedIn purely because of the noise factor, or at least, if not complete deleting the profile, but at least locking it down and making it dormant or more hidden, such that they can protect their sense of well-being. Do you feel, on the final note on this, do you feel that the size of direct corporate exec search will increase in terms of numbers of people doing it relative to the other functions in the recruitment in the organization?
Yeah, I think it will. So we've long-standing had a perspective that if somebody's doing around 20 searches a year, bringing in 20 roles from the outside at senior level, then that justifies having a function. And if they're going to focus their recruiting and take some of their time away from with all the stuff that's being automated or process heavy, and then they can focus on the top end talent, 20 searches a year is not a huge amount. And so I would say we're going to start to see regular, not necessarily massive companies doing more of this. So yes. Now, saying that, this group has been around for 30 years. It's still a niche space. And so you would have thought that, with all the spend folks are making on search firms and all that, that they would have done this faster and taken on more. So I would say it's going to grow, but it's not going to grow quickly. It's going to grow just gently and slowly. It might be that we start putting more energy towards this space. But yeah, it will grow, but not massively, or at least not based on historical trends.
Yeah.
It's a strange thing though, and it's like the poor, I don't know, I probably shouldn't say this, but anyway, redheaded stepchild or whatever the phrase is. It's like we put the least money into the places that deal with the highest level of the company. They're often scrapping for budgets, and I know everybody in TA is, for the record, so we're not whining. But it is kind of a forgotten little corner that people don't talk, partly because they don't talk about it, because it is super secret squirrel stuff.
Yeah, really, really interesting. Simon, final thing. ESIX is obviously a membership organization. What kind of people should be interested in that? Like, can you give us an idea of what the ideal profile of a member would be? Should anybody who's listening to this potentially, be part of a business that might want to take part in it?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually any corporation who has a function like this or is interested. And candidly, if membership aside, we've got books. I put in the chat there. We've thanks to you and this whatever you're calling this. Anyway, thanks to this situation, we're giving away free Kindle for the next 3 days. If anybody wants to, I can also send them one of our books. So we got books. So my point being that it doesn't have to be that you have to be in a massive company, because now we're seeing smaller companies, as we touched on, doing some of this. And I'm going to actually copy this and put it in the chat here. We will also send you a book, because people still need to do this, even if they're not massive organizations. Most of our organizations are pretty large. So anybody in a large organization, let us know if you're interested in talking about this. We've been around 30 years. We'll be around for another 30 years. It doesn't have to be about membership, but if you are interested, happy to chat to you. Mostly large organizations, often global, not necessarily. Often in Europe, we've got Adidas, we've got Specsavers, British Telecom, Mondelez, and so on and so forth, and among others in Europe as well. So, can be anywhere in the world, can be any size, but usually it's larger organizations, and we're talking team membership here, not individuals. That was a bit of a fluffy answer. Sorry, hon.
Not at all. Brilliant stuff. Okay, Simon, listen, I'm going to let you go. Thank you so much for giving your time and sharing your insights. Also, thank you for, being a soldier when it comes down to wrestling with the tech and holding the fort when I was off air and coming on and off screen. So wonderful to have your agility on that, Simon. Great chatting with you, sir. Have a good day. Have a great weekend. And thank you, everyone, for watching. I hope you enjoyed it and got value from it. We'll be back next week. As ever, to the end of the year, the schedule, in fact, for Breakthrough Live is already out. And you'll all be getting an email from this going forward. So we've got a very exciting sort of end of the year run up and we'll be with you to the end. All right, brilliant stuff, Simon. Thank you very much.
Thank you.